So in today's video, I'm going to be taking the top 10 best philosophies of all time and comparing them to more philosophy. This will give you a better understanding of what more philosophy is. So what we're going to do is a side-by-side comparison for each of them, as well as just me giving my overall take on each philosophy. So first we have empiricism. The main idea behind empiricism is that all knowledge comes from experience and sensory observation. According to empiricists, the human mind begins as a blank slate and understanding develops through interacting with the world. Now, it's important to note that when empiricists say knowledge, the knowledge that they are talking about is physical, third-dimensional knowledge. So this has to do with the 5 physical senses. So basically there's 3D knowledge, which is limited, and then there's higher dimensional true knowledge that comes from getting in tune with the spirit self. The knowledge you get from the 5 physical senses is limited and is not aligned with the divine rational. So let's say someone consecutively meets 3 people who turned out to be bad people, and those 3 people all happened to have the same skin color. Based on your 3-dimensional, limited, logical observations, it would be simple to conclude that everybody of that skin color is bad. That is, if you were just going off pure 3-dimensional logic. But the divine rational would take a bunch of other things into consideration to have a well-informed conclusion. So when empiricists say all knowledge, that phrase isn't correct because it doesn't reflect the complete reality. So more philosophy says that true knowledge exists in the 5th dimensions and above, the higher dimensions, and limited knowledge exists in the 3rd dimension and dimensions below that. Alright, so next we have Rationalism by René Descartes. The idea behind rationalism is that reason and logical thinking are the primary sources of knowledge. Rationalists believe that certain truths can be discovered through thinking alone, independent of sensory experience. So this is true. Knowledge is acquired by reason and logic. So you observe the world with your physical senses, and you use the divine intuition, the divine rationale, to form a complete perspective and understanding of the world. But more philosophy says that there are 3 main places in reality that knowledge is acquired. Firstly, the physical plane, then the mental plane, and then the realm of no mind. The physical plane is obviously the world that we're living in currently. That's where you start to understand what life is. And then as you grow in your spiritual journey, you ascend to more higher planes of consciousness. And then you spend more time in the mental plane, deconstructing any false beliefs that you might have, and then adopting new beliefs through reason. And then the realm of no mind is where you figure out your true self, just pure consciousness and awareness. So finally, you gain the knowledge of who you are, which is just pure awareness. Okay, so next we have nihilism. Nihilism questions whether life has any objective meaning, purpose, or moral truth. It often argues that traditional values and beliefs, especially religious or moral systems, are human inventions rather than universal truth. Okay, so it's important to note that when people, especially nihilists, say that life has no meaning, the life that they are talking about is the 3rd dimension, the illusion. Because the truth is that everybody does have a purpose in life, and each person's purpose is ascending from this illusion created by the 3rd dimension. So in that sense, the meaning comes from realizing that there is no meaning in the illusion. But at the same time, that purpose isn't objective because everybody has a choice to get on their individual purpose or not. But yeah, more philosophy says life has no objective meaning or truth. It is us that gives life meaning. Next, we have Marxism. Marxism analyzes society through the lens of class struggle between those who control economic resources and those who work for them. Marx argued that capitalism exploits workers and that history moves towards a more equal society where resources are shared and class divisions disappear. So this is true. The system that we currently live under is hierarchical and exploitative. It preys on people's irrationality, and yes, society will eventually become more equal and more cooperative in the future. But only if more people abandon the carnist mindset, because carnism is exploitative by nature. So more philosophy says society will become more equal when people let go of the carnist mindset. Next up, we have utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is an ethical philosophy that says the best action is the one that produces the greatest happiness for the greatest number of people. Moral decisions should be judged by their consequences and how much overall well-being they create. I completely agree with this philosophy 100%. Though I will say it's very ironic since the creators of this philosophy participated in the exploitation of animals by eating meat, because to endorse such an ethical philosophy but at the same time engage in the exploitation of animals isn't a very logical thing to do. But to be fair to them, they lived in a period of human history where humanity was at a lower awareness level and less intelligent. Plus, the both of them made multiple arguments questioning the ethics of animal exploitation. But more philosophy says happiness is created by ascending to the higher self. And by existing in that higher self, that energy will spread to everyone around you. And by you putting out good energy into the universe, simply by existing in your higher self, that energy will continue coming back to you, because whatever you put out is what you get. And that would create fulfillment in your life. So next up, we have existentialism. Existentialism argues that life has no predetermined meaning or purpose. Instead, each person must create their own meaning through choices and actions. It emphasizes freedom and the idea that individuals define themselves by how they live. So it isn't necessarily true that life has no purpose, because as said previously, the basic purpose of life is transcending illusion and not letting it control you. So more philosophy says the purpose of life is transcending the illusion. Next, we have Confucianism. Confucianism emphasizes moral character, respect, and social harmony. It teaches that a stable society comes when people behave ethically in their roles, such as parent, ruler, or citizen, and when they practice virtues like kindness, respect, and responsibility toward others. So that's partially true, but the important thing to understand is if people are just playing roles just because, specifically roles that they don't necessarily want to, they are only doing it because society has told them to, then that is going to lead to an unfulfilling and unstable mindset and life. However, more philosophy says that a stable, happy, and thriving society comes when people exist in their true higher selves. Next, we have Stoicism. So Stoicism teaches that happiness comes from focusing only on what we can control and accepting everything else calmly. Stoics believe external things like wealth, status, or fame don't determine happiness. Living virtuously and rationally does. So yes, everything that was said here is definitely true. If you stop trying to control the external, instead direct your attention to the internal, which is the only thing you can control, you will find fulfillment in life. But there is something about materialism that people should understand. When people say materialism doesn't bring happiness, that doesn't mean that materialism is a bad thing. This is something that people get confused all the time. Your material life, or whatever wealth that you end up accumulating, is supposed to be secondary or complementary to the mindset that you've cultivated, existing in your higher self and who you are as a person. It's supposed to be a reflection of what impact that you've left on the world, what you've done for people, or what market that you've satisfied. It's only when you skip the internal work and go chase material resources, that is when the problems arise. Because if you skip the internal work and manage to accumulate resources with just pure discipline, like your soul isn't going to feel like you belong in that reality, and that is when you feel empty. So more philosophy says existing in your higher virtues come first, and then whatever worldly resources you accumulate is secondary and naturally comes as a result of that. So next we have Aristotelianism. Aristotle believed knowledge comes from studying the natural world through observation and reasoning. He argued that everything in nature has a purpose or function, and the goal of human life is to achieve eudaimonia, through virtue, balance, and rational thinking. Yes, he was definitely correct. Knowledge comes from studying and observing the natural world, but also from observing yourself. I would take it a step further by saying the goal of human living is to discover eudaimonia by transcending illusion through reason and choice. So more philosophy says the goal of human living is to discover eudaimonia by transcending illusions through reason and choice. And last, but definitely not least, we have Platonism by Plato, my boy. So Plato basically invented the theory of forms, a very beautiful philosophy. But he teaches that the physical world that we see is only a shadow of a deeper, perfect reality. But he teaches that the physical world that we see is only a shadow of a deeper, perfect reality. Now, according to Plato, true knowledge comes from understanding eternal forms or ideal truths that exist beyond the material world. Things like justice, beauty, and goodness have perfect forms that earthly things only imperfectly reflect. Now, Plato's philosophy is very interesting because it captures the dichotomy of this reality that we live in. And of course, I'm talking about duality. He refers to this perfect reality, which is simply the fifth dimension, and the imperfect reality, which is just the third dimension or the illusion. And the statement also says earthly things only imperfectly reflect the perfect reality. It's quite literally the difference between something like fulfillment and pleasure. Let's take junk food and real food, for example. So the junk food represents pleasure, which is just the imperfect version of satisfaction. So when you eat real food, you become satisfied, and pleasure naturally comes secondary to that. But the difference with junk food is the pleasure comes first, but the satisfactory aspect never follows. Because it's not real food, it's not whole, and that is why people need more of it and turn into gluttons. So not only is the junk food aspect inverted in the fact that pleasure comes first, but the satisfactory aspect never follows through, ever. And that is the reason why Plato called it imperfect, because it is incomplete. But yeah, Platonism and more philosophy are very, very similar. Platonism says perfect reality and imperfect reality. More philosophy says higher dimension or higher reality, and then lower dimension and lower reality.